Are you not entertained? The New York Mets continue to be the most entertaining team in baseball, bar none. They become the first team in Major League Baseball history to be no hit through 8 innings and then score 6 runs in the ninth inning. And even when they were being no hit, they couldn't just get no hit like a normal team. Only one strikeout. Getting no hit while striking out only once is more impressive than getting no hit. And for the pitcher, the kid, I feel bad for him. Twice in 18 days to have a situation where he's got a no-hitter going in the ninth inning and gives up a home run. But what a home run. The call by Gary. Linsanity. He slams the pen down. He picks up the other pen, slams that, then picks up the first pen again and writes with that one. He does it every time. It's amazing. I don't know what the two pens are, but he's got some different thing we're going on there where he slams one down, picks up the other one, then slams the other one down. Obviously, one's red, one's black. He's got a coding system in his. Not the point. The point is the Mets are awesome. And Francisco Lindor, every time you've needed him, every time you've called on him, he's come up with big hit after big hit after big hit. And then Francisco Alvarez, because the only constant in the Mets lineup has been Lindor, but the other people, it's been just a merry-go-round. Whether one night it is Francisco Alvarez, it was Brandon Nimmo for a month and a half. Jose Iglesias has some big hits. Obviously, JD Martinez. The last time the Mets were getting no hit the home run and broke it up with a home run against the Braves. It's been someone else every night. Of course, you can't forget Mark Vientos. The only guy who hasn't been a contributor for the New York Mets is Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso came up with the bases loaded yesterday. Now he got the job done. He had a sac fly. I know it gave the Mets the lead. Ultimately, Pete Alonso has the go-ahead run in the game. You know that I think it was 56% of time there's a runner on third and nobody out, or sorry, less than 2 outs, that is. A runner on third, less than 2 outs. 57, I think it was, percent of the time that run is scored across Major League Baseball. This is league average. I'm not telling you to be great. I just want you to be league average. Pete Alonso's percentage is 33% now. That was after coming through yesterday. He's 10 for 30. He's well below league average. Pete Alonso, I expect you to be at least league average if you're going to be one of those guys who's supposed to be contributing, one of the key contributors in our lineup. You're supposed to be one of those guys who, when runners are on base and we need you to bring them in, you're the guy we turn to. So don't give me the numbers are actually better than you think. Look at all his home runs. Most of them are to tie a game or take the lead. Yeah, in the first couple of innings, in high leverage spots with runners in scoring position, those two categories, he's been non-existent. I don't want to hear the argument from anyone anymore. Pete Alonso, you have 14 days now to turn around. Every passing day, there's less time. I don't know how the season will be remembered. Now, they have, of their next, I think it's like 14 or 15 games left to go in the season. 10 of them, or I think maybe even 11. They have 7 against Philly, and I think 3 or 4 against Atlanta. I'm not certain. I need to check that. But the point is, they have a series with Atlanta and 2 with Philly. Pete Alonso, you want to get going? Go off in those series. Carry them in those series. Be the second guy that I talked about, the cast, the rotating cast who's been the second guy to Francisco Lindor. Be that guy. But I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. If it hasn't happened to this point, I don't see it happening. So the Mets have won 11 to 12 games. They keep staying hot. And just when you think that they're going to fall down, again, they get back up. Whether it's the day after the loss in San Diego, the day after the loss in Arizona. And by the way, again, Edwin Diaz comes into this game, throws one pitch, gets a pop out, the end, game over. He has been one of the best pitchers in baseball the last few weeks. Not just relievers. He's been so reliable. If you have this guy going to the playoffs, and I'm starting to think about this. If both teams make the playoffs, who do you expect to go on a deeper run? Who's more built for the postseason? The Mets who get clutch hit after clutch hit? The Mets whose starting pitching is nails and have a shutdown guy, lockdown guy at the back end of the bullpen? Or the Yankees? They don't have a lot of that stuff. So my point is, this Mets team has been really fun. Pete, you still have an opportunity to be one of those guys on the cast of characters who have helped Francisco Lindor. You still have a chance, but it's a dwindling chance. That window is shrinking fast. But the Mets keep getting back up off the mat. It's what I've said before. I'll say it 1,000 times. When the Yankees lose a game, it turns into a spiral. It turns into a few games. It turns into multiple losses. When they have a bad loss, it turns into a weak slump. When the Mets lose a game, the very next day, they're back up and they come back and get you. They've proven that over and over. Even when they've had a devastating series, a series loss, they lose 2 out of 3 to the Marlins. They come back and get you. This team is awesome, and they mirror their manager, Carlos Mendoza, who's carried them all year, should be the manager of the year if the Mets make the playoffs. And currently, if the season ended today, they'd be in a playoff spot. Here's the thing about Francisco Lindor, though. And I said he's carried this team all year. He's been the number one guy. And if you look at him, because this is the conversation, this is what everyone's talking about. The big topic across Major League Baseball now, the discourse, and it's because New York bias and a lot of other things, is Francisco Lindor should be the MVP over Shohei Ohtani out in LA. And it's just not true. Francisco Lindor has better numbers in the clutch, better late game OPS. He's been incredible this year. He's carried this Mets team, like I said. He plays shortstop every day, the toughest position, and does it at a high level, whereas Ohtani's a DH. I get it. It's probably more impressive that he's actually recovering from Tommy John surgery, but people don't want to talk about that. That's like something going on in his personal life as opposed to something that's related to the game because we don't see it on the field. You can't count that as part of his MVP argument. I get it. Fine. Francisco Lindor, I saw these numbers, whether I talked about them on the episode last week, whether you're talking about clutch moments, whether you're talking about runners in scoring position, 2 outs, all these big things, he's had a better OPS is the number they use than Shohei Ohtani. Now, that's not everything. He hasn't driven in more runs. I get that. But he's not the MVP. First of all, look at the numbers. And this is a stupid way to look at it because I know his WAR is really high and it feels like the eye test, right? We talked about Pete and looking at the numbers versus the eye test. Lindor's numbers, they don't jump out at you as like, wow, MVP season. 268, 30 homers, 20-something RBIs, 25, 26 RBIs. Sorry, 26 stolen bases. Obviously, he's got like 80-something RBIs. They don't jump out at you as like, wow, these are insane numbers. They're solid numbers. Really, really good numbers, actually. But they're not blow you away numbers. When you look at Ohtani's numbers, they blow you away. He's going to have a 50-50 season. But I don't even care about that because you could talk about, okay, he's in a better lineup. Lindor's had more clutch hits, whatever you want. I'm not willing to give the MVP to a guy who showed up a month and a half to 2 months late to the baseball season. It's not, I can't do it. Especially for a team that their season's going to come down to a game or two. If they miss the playoffs, if the New York Mets miss the playoffs by a game or two, and Francisco Lindor showed up to the season on May 20th, you don't think that if he showed up earlier in the season, you don't think that if he started playing better in April and the end of March when the season starts, the Mets would currently be in a much better position, maybe the number 1 wild card? You don't think they'd be secure in a playoff spot right now? Of course they would be. I'm not blaming him for their early season failures. And in fact, I give him most of the credit for the season surge that they've had. There was Edwin Diaz. There was pitchers blowing games. Pete Alonso's the top of the list of blame. I'm not blaming Lindor for that. But my point is, if you're the MVP, the most valuable player for the entire season, and your team misses the playoffs by a game or two, or just barely gets in by a game or two, or it's a difference between hosting a wild card series versus going on the road for a wild card series, because you took the first month and a half to 2 months of the season off, and we're not just league average. You were atrocious for those 2 months. I'm sorry. I can't give you the MVP. You've carried this team for the last 4 months. I'm not saying Lindor has had a bad season. Lindor has had an incredible season. I give Francisco Lindor all the credit in the world for this Mets turnaround. I give him all the credit in the world for what he's done for the last 4 months. When everyone around him struggled, he picked everyone up. Like I said, there's been a casting characters around him that he's pitching a little bit, he's pitching a little bit, he's pitching a little bit. Not you, Pete, but everyone else has pitched in a little bit. The one constant throughout this run has been Francisco Lindor, 100%. And I give him all the credit in the world for that. He deserves all the credit in the world for that. But when this team was floundering, he could have carried them then too. He could have made a difference in a game or two. He could have been at least league average so that the team could have gotten off to somewhat of a better start. When they were historically bad, 11 games under 500 in May, he could have done something about it at that point. He didn't have to wait for it to get that bad for him to get going. Because let me tell you, if he got going earlier, this Mets season would be a lot different. They'd be in a much different position now, and it's not all his fault. Like I said, the pitching was poor. Diaz blew games. Other guys in the bullpen, Jorge Lopez, we talked about all of it. Took JD Martinez 2 months to show up from what? Being a free agent? I'm not blaming Lindor for the early season struggles, but I can't give the MVP to a guy who, because of his early season struggles, could end up costing his team. Sorry. He's not the MVP, especially when there's another guy in the league in Shohei Ohtani who's having a historic season, could have the first ever 50-50 season. That's just the facts. And I love Francisco Lindor. This is not an anti-Francisco Lindor thing. I don't want, that's why I started out by praising him. I don't want this to be turned into an anti-Francisco Lindor thing. He's not the MVP. The Yankees had a win too, by the way. It was a nice win. First walk-off in the career of Jazz Chisholm. I do feel like Jazz Chisholm is going to be one of those guys who comes through for the Yankees in the postseason. I talked about on my fantasy baseball podcast. You go listen to that. Just Fantasy Baseball. Just look up Just Fantasy or Just Baseball. You'll find our conversations. I do it with Vince D'Amato twice a week, every Monday and Thursday. Now the season's winding down, but we'll be back next season and talking about it. That's not official at any point, or not unofficial either. I haven't been told. I'm not under contract for next year, but hopefully we're back next year. I think we did a good job. Not the point. This industry is fun, as you can see. But Francisco, I talk about Jazz Chisholm being one of those guys. I just Francisco Lindor on my mind still. But Jazz Chisholm, I said this week he was going to be a lock to get going at home. Big series against Kansas City, big series against Boston. He's the type of guy to get up for these games. And so far, he has the walk-off yesterday. And do the Yankees have a new closer? I mean, this dude has been awesome coming out of the bullpen when you didn't know what was going to happen out of the bullpen once Clay Holmes was moved out of the closer spot. And by the way, him blowing the game in the 7th is not better than him blowing the game in the 9th. Sorry, Aaron Boone. He can't be in high leverage situations no matter when it is. Just a fact. If you're up 1, down 1, why would you bring in a guy who's an automatic give up a run or two? Can't bring in Clay Holmes. But Luke Weaver has been the best thing that happened to the Yankees at this point in the season because he's got that energy. Can you imagine him getting fired up like that, walking off the mound in a postseason game in October when the place is fired up, the Bronx is cold and packed? That would be awesome. Aaron Judge hasn't hit a home run in 2 weeks, over 2 weeks now. Maybe this cold stretch is good now, so he's not peaking too early. He peaks at the right time, and we saw it in 2022 when he hit the 60 home runs. He peaked too soon. Down the stretch in September, he was hitting those home runs, and then October he disappeared. Hopefully this means that October he shows up as opposed to the past when he hasn't showed up in October. But Luke Weaver could be the key to this Yankee bullpen. Not only does he throw, he comes in, throws an inning or two. He got 5 outs in high leverage spots, runners on base because the extra inning rule, automatically there's a runner on base. Big spots for the Yankees, and he came through time and time again. He's fired up. He fires the team up. He's got energy. He has that almost closer mentality, it feels like, when he's out there on the mound. So hopefully Luke Weaver is the Yankee closer in the postseason. I'd like to see that. To the football. The NFL is back. I'm so excited. I missed it so much after Sunday and then the Jets on Monday. And I talked to Willie Colon and Bilal Powell this week. I talked to Antoine Staley. I'm going to talk to BP again tomorrow. It's been an awesome week for football. I was a guest on one of the shows with a former Jags tight end on Sirius XM Mad Dog Radio. So it was an exciting, fun week for me and football. But I'm excited for it to be back. I missed it the last couple of days. So tonight, Thursday night football, I'll get to that pick in a second because my head was in a pretzel. But I do have my power rankings again. We'll go 1 through 32. I have my new power rankings for this week, and there's been a lot of movement. So starting after next week, I'm going to track the movement because I think after week 1, it's probably all over the place. But we'll start to track the movement where it was from week 1 to week 2. But right now, for week 2, I have the Niners as the best team in the league. I thought they showed that they can be perfect. Whereas the Chiefs, I did see a couple of holes, but I like the Niners as the best team in the league. Number 2, I do have the Chiefs still winning games, although they were torn through their defense right down the end. Now the Ravens are probably better than the Jets, so maybe you have to take that into consideration. They're 1 and 2. They're right there. I have the Lions as 3. What their offensive line did in overtime in that game, I've talked about it. I mean, no one can compete with that. They're going to be playing indoors. I know I wasn't so high on them to start the season, hangover, all that. They still blew a 2-touchdown lead in this game, but they came back, found a way to win it. It's almost more impressive. So congrats to them on that. I have them at 3. Number 4, I have the Cowboys. I know the second half wasn't great, but it didn't have to be great. They came out after Dak got the contract, blew out the Browns, who might stink, but their defense is really good, and the Cowboys put up a ton of points on them. So I like the Cowboys at 4. Number 5, I have the Eagles. I know they didn't look perfect, but Saquon, oh my God, he might be perfect. So if that can keep going, I have them at 5. Number 6 is the Ravens. The Ravens are a really good team. They lost that game. I didn't think they put up enough points. Lamar missed some key throws late. I expect better from them. but I still think they're a really good team. Number 7 is the Texans. Now, I would say starting with the Eagles, because there's the top 4, then starting with the Eagles, I would say this is like the, can make a Super Bowl category as of now. Texans, I like them. There's nothing not to like. CJ Stroud is awesome. Good team. The Rams, same thing. Like they almost had that game. If they get the ball first in overtime, who knows? Maybe they go down and win it. It felt like it. And that drive I talked about with Cooper Kupp over and over and over again felt like the Super Bowl. So, you ride that. Number 9 is the Bills. I didn't like that they got down big. I don't like their defense. I think their defense stinks, and we'll talk about it for tonight. But Josh Allen is special. So they're number 9, and number 10 is the Packers. I still love the Packers. And I'll include 11 and 12 in the same category also, that I could definitely see them in a Super Bowl. But 10 is the Packers. And the reason the Packers are 10 still, despite the quarterback situation. Hopefully he's not out too long. They didn't put him on IR with Jordan Love, so hopefully he's back soon. I think they can actually, because of their defense and because some of the playmakers they have on offense, and obviously the running back with Josh Jacobs, I think they could actually stay relevant. I don't love Malik Willis, and that one throw he had looked terrible, so I don't know what to think of them for the next couple of weeks, but I think hopefully they could stay relevant for 2-3 weeks, maybe even 4 a month if they have to. Despite being 0-1 already, I still think once they come back, once Jordan Love comes back, they'll be in a really good situation to compete moving forward. Number 11 is the Miami Dolphins. I don't know what we'll see from them tonight. I expect to see more offense, but then again, it's Thursday Night Football. We'll get to that. We'll get to the Thursday night game. This is why my head's in a pretzel, but 20 points, not great. The defense, though, looked a lot better than I expected after starting off really slow against the Jags. I thought the defense really picked it up in that second half. So I do like what the Dolphins have been able to do or later in that game, the second half of that game, but the offense still looked a tick off. This whole Tua's the most accurate quarterback, and then he overthrows like the most impossible guy to overthrow in Tyreek Hill is mind-boggling. But okay, fine. Number 12 is the Bengals. The Bengals historically start really slow. I think they're now 1-8 in the first 2 weeks of the season. So even if they lose this week, which again, not good, but 1-8 with Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor in the first 2 weeks of the season, really not good. But I mean, they've proven that they can come back from that. So I'm not shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if they turn out to be really good and end up in a Super Bowl. So I have them at 12. Number 13, a team that I was not high on coming into the season, but after seeing some of the interactions with Harbaugh and just seeing that this team doesn't have to be, all on Justin Herbert's shoulders. Even if the roster is not great, J.K. Dobbins did look incredible in the first game coming off an Achilles. Of all the guys coming off of big injuries, he looked the best. If you look at Elijah Vera Tucker for the Jets, if you look at Aaron Rodgers for the Jets, if you look at Kirk Cousins, those guys didn't look great. But the one guy who did look great was J.K. Dobbins. So J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers, I have them at number 13. Number 14, I have the Bucks. I don't know why people are low on them. And that's a line that right now, I don't know if that line gets smaller, but one of the bigger lines on the week they're playing against against the Lions. And I know I love the Lions, but I don't know. I might take the Bucks to cover. All right, we'll talk about that after Thursday Night Football. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Number 15, I have the Jets. I'm still not out on the Jets. I still think this is a playoff team. I think some of the parts of the Jets that were exposed were the defensive line and how little depth there is on that defensive line compared to last year. We'll see what happens with that. They need to get pressure. Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson need to be better. They need to beat the Tennessee Titans, but I'm not totally out on the Jets yet. I think Aaron Rodgers looked like pretty much like himself. He's not as mobile as he was, but I think that will get better as the season goes on. And we know Breece Hall is going to be better. And the offensive line and pass pro look pretty good. Run blocking, I expect to get better as the season goes on. And Garrett Wilson looked at times unstoppable. And I still think they'll probably get Devontae Adams. I have them at 15. Number 16 is the Seahawks. The game was closer than the final score if you watch it with Denver, but they scored a couple touchdowns late. So the Seahawks did win that game. I have them at 16. 17 is the Steelers. That defense was awesome, but 5 field goals, they got to give me something on offense this week before I could put them any higher than 17. 18, I have the Jags. What a start for the Jaguars, and then 1-9. I don't know. I expect this team to be good. Coming into the year, I thought this team was good, but my God, they might be just super mediocre. Number 19 is the Saints. Oh, but they put up a ton of points. Yeah, against Carolina. Carolina stinks. I wouldn't be shocked if the Saints turn around and lost this week. So I have them at 19 despite the great week 1. Number 20, I have the Vikings. I don't think they're the worst team in that division. I don't even think they're that bad. Now this week, I expect them to get their asses kicked by the Niners. But if they made it close, wouldn't that look bad for the Jets? If they kept it close, Sam Darnold going against his former team, a team that should know him well and should be able to pick him apart because they saw him in practice every week. I expect the Vikings to lose, but I have them at 20. Number 21 is the Browns. That defense is supposed to be great, but they stunk. And Deshaun Watson might be the worst quarterback in football. Number 22 is the Atlanta Falcons. Tough loss. Kirk Cousins' first game off the Achilles looked bad. I still expect them to be good. I really do. I expect Kirk Cousins to get it going. This team has a lot of talent. They have a lot of offensive weapons with London, and with Bijan Robinson. So Kyle Pitts, he's there too. So I like the Falcons still. One game isn't going to deter me, but they look pretty bad in that one game. Number 23 is the Colts. They put up some points. Anthony Richardson looks like he could be amazing at times. Looks like he's a train wreck at times. And ultimately, they lost to a division rival, but I expect them to be better than that going forward. 24 is the Cardinals. Kyler looks like Kyler. That's the good news for the Cardinals. I don't know what's wrong with Marvin Harrison Jr. First game, I don't know. But yikes, didn't look great. Number 25 is the Bears. I've said my piece on the Bears. I don't think they're that good. I really don't. And I don't think Caleb Williams showed me anything to make me think that they're great. Maybe first game, rookie. We'll see what happens. Number 26 is the Patriots. Their defense is good. They force turnovers, but we just talked about the Bengals record in those games. So maybe it was just a matter of the Bengals sucking, and the Patriots will come back down to earth and remind us. Remember, what was it? The team I think it was the Panthers. Was it last year or 2 years ago that they won week 1? And I was like, see, they're not as bad as people thought. And then they lost 15 or 16 in a row. I think it was 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure. I know what happened with the Jags the year that they ended up getting Trevor Lawrence. Also, they won week 1. So sometimes these terrible teams win week 1 and then never again. So maybe that's the case with the Patriots. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't win another game all year. Actually, I would be surprised, not shocked. Number 27 is the Titans. How do you lose that game? The answer is Will Levis. And if Will Levis is this and he's going to keep making those mistakes, yikes. So right now, if you're keeping score at home, I have the Titans at 27 and the Jets at 15. The Jets better fucking beat the Titans. That's all I got to say. The Broncos are 28. They lost that game. At times, Bo Nix looked like a rookie quarterback. At times, he looked okay and showed some impressive signs. That's what you expect from that team. They're not going to be a great team this year, I don't think. Number 29 is the Commanders. They were worse than I thought, and they don't have a lot of skill position guys. And then when you stop throwing the ball or decide not to throw the ball at all to Terry McLaurin, that's a problem. So Jaden Daniels, you might want to learn who number, I think he's 16 is. Clearly, I don't know, but you might want to find out what number Terry McLaurin wears and find a way to get the ball to him. Number 30 is the Raiders. They could either easily be lower, but the two teams below them are awful too. And that's the Giants are 31 and the Panthers are 32. Now to Thursday Night Football. My mind was in a pretzel for this game because I don't know what to do. In general, Thursday Night Football games are low scoring. Short practice, not a lot of time. Now, the Dolphins are supposed to have this high-powered, incredible offense. They scored a total of 20 points and struggled to do it last week. Now, the Dolphins' defense isn't supposed to be as great, and the Bills' defense is supposed to suck, but the Bills put up 1,000,000 points last week. Short week, early in the season, should equal low points. These two teams should equal a ton of points. That's why I'm so confused. There's a lot to look at here. So what I decided to do, I like the points in the game. I kind of like the Bills actually to keep it close. I think the Bills are better than the Dolphins. I think advantage Dolphins, the fact that it's at home early in the season in Miami, cool. I like all that for the Dolphins. So I think the Dolphins should put up a bunch of points, but where was that last week? So I think they'll put up more points on this Bills defense than they did on the Jags defense. I do think the Bills will keep it close though. So I do like the Bills kind of in this game. But what I settled on is if the Bills are going to keep it close and there's going to be a lot of points in this game, maybe not 40 points, 30 points per team, but 27 to 24 type of game, or Miami puts up 30 points and the Bills still put up like 25 points, 26, 27 points. So I looked at the Bills team total and I like them to keep it close. And I like there to be a bunch of points in this game, but not a ton. So I like the Bills team total over 23.5. It's minus 110 on FanDuel, but FanDuel has a boost. So if you go check out the FanDuel boost, you could see that every bet on this game, you could get a boost. So I took the Bills team total over 23.5, minus 110, but I boosted it. So that's my bet for tonight. All right, we'll talk about the game after the game, and then we'll preview the rest of Sunday's games tomorrow morning. Till next time, like, subscribe, share the podcast. Appreciate you all for listening. See ya.